For the few of you who have probably seen my community post, the old man is doing much better now. He hasn't had any issues since then. It was just a matter of seemingly eating something that made his stomach a little sour, and he's all good. For those who didn't see the post, you don't know what I'm talking about, but I am here to listen to Yu-Peng Chen's new album. At very least, the first song I saw on it, which was Welcome to Fantasyland, which makes sense as the first song. But I'm going to put the old man down first because he's happy, and he's starting to sink a little too far, and I can't hold him the whole reaction. So, off you go. The fact that this is only 3 minutes is going to be very unfortunate. I already know that going into it. I always want more of Yu-Peng. You little shit. I already know what this man's doing. Yep. Yep. I'll give him his proper shit after I'm done listening. And I'll explain myself and what I mean, of course. Bruh. Yep. Man. Ooh. Ooh. Did not expect the accordion there. Credit where credit's due. Did not anticipate that. Yu-Peng Chen. You clever, magnificent bastard. I'm sure this sounds terrible out of context. I'll offer context, as always. It's just a little cheeky. Man, that's so beautiful, though. His way of writing is so gorgeous. But I'm also going to call him out for doing exactly what he did, so you watch yourself, Yu-Peng Chen. I'm coming for you. I got your number, Yu-Peng Chen. It's the key of E. What other song has Yu-Peng Chen done, not just in the key of E, but utilizing the same general format, the flow? They are slightly different things. Like, this one is a waltz. It's in 3/4, not necessarily 4/4 like the other one, but it's very similar in a lot of ways to Song of Innocence from Genshin Impact. I clocked that immediately. I'm sure a few other people have clocked that immediately. It is different enough to not sound exactly the same. However, the key, the placement, everything about the feel, the vibe in general sounded so similar to that. It's trying to invoke a very similar childlike wonder. Of course, with the whole theme of fantasy there, that's kind of like obvious in a way, but still. Just his approach to this was so familiar, and almost immediately I was like, oh, that's what it is. Just out of the few songs that I have heard of Yu-Peng, in the grand scheme of things, I haven't heard his entire repertoire, but still, so you can hear what I mean, the key of E is simple. Beautiful, straightforward, gorgeous key, really does lend to that nostalgic feeling. I've talked about that so many times at this point, I'm going to start sprouting gray hairs, but at the same time, nonetheless, a beautiful key to utilize that sort of emotion. You want to pull that sort of response out of somebody emotionally, you want to use the key of E. You want that nostalgic sensation, that fantasy, like that childlike wonder, use the key of E, or C sharp minor, of course, if you want to get to the relative part of that side. But either way, it's like, that's what he's trying to do. He wants to invoke that feeling again. So of course you would go back to something that you know very well, that you've written in before, that you know exactly the tone, the approach, the obvious differences in the song aside, the vibe is there. He has that childlike innocence, that wonder, that fantasy in this song and in this sound, and he's just utilizing that again. This is not a bad thing. For those who might be seeing this as me just trying to do a gotcha on Yu-Peng Chen, it's not by any means. This is just a smart way to write what's familiar. The way that he starts the song, just with the piano, just very floaty, everything's just kind of starting to get you into the feel of it. He loves to do that. A lot of his songs start with just piano. But when you want the song to evolve, you want to start it simple. You have to have somewhere to go. So starting with a singular instrument, like in this case, starting with just a piano, and in the case of Song of Innocence, starting with just the child's voice was like the main lead thing. I can't remember if there was a piano under the child's voice, but it was very minimal all the same. And he did the same thing in Song of Innocence and Fantasyland here, where you evolve naturally as it goes on. It gets bigger, more instruments are involved, you start to get to this swell of emotion, and it's a literal thing in his music. His composition physically manifests that swell and that gigantic emotional catharsis. I'm sorry. Just utilizing the natural dissonance in the key of E major. It's a major key, but it has four different sharps and flats in it. And that's a lot for a major key. Usually they're much more reliant on the white keys, those whole notes, that major sound that we tend to associate with a major key is more on the white keys. Having this many black keys allows for that dissonance to really shine through, and you're able to utilize it more. It sounds a little bit sadder, a little bit more quaint, a little quieter. There's a mystery there that can be answered, but it's also light and flamboyant to a degree. It's allowing itself to work through all of this by allowing itself to root back to the fact that it's a major scale, and you can just kind of do what you need in there. There's a lot of flexibility in E major, and Yu-Peng Chen absolutely abuses it in the best way possible in order to invoke those emotions out of the listener. I know it's most likely a heavy coincidence that it sounds so much like Song of Innocence to me, but at the same time, like I said already, he's trying to invoke that same emotion out of the people and that same flow. The fact that this song, for example, is in a 3/4, it's in a waltz time, it feels very much more like a dance, a much more mystical, like there's a lightness to a waltz. There's something that makes you want to dance to that 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 count rather than a 1 2 3 4. That 3-step flow really does make it feel a little bit more fantastical, a little bit more mystical, and that really adds a lot to the fact that the song is based on a fantasy land, quite literally. And just as an additional thought, I love that the maze on the artwork for this song is a Mobius strip. That's really cool. I just love that idea. It's like, it's a maze, you'll never escape it, but there's also a whimsy to the fantasy edge of that, and I just think that's cool as a design aspect, but that's beside the point. We're talking about the music here. If I had to be bold and try to guess the point of Yu-Peng Chen utilizing this as like the opener, the name title of this album, it's that he wants to remind people of the songs before, the music he's made before, maybe just a little bit, to make something familiar, fresh but familiar, something that you can latch onto and recognize that it's still him, but he's doing something different with it. I might be getting a little bit too woo-woo about that, but it's possible that his intent was there of, here's my new self, here's what I'm making, I'm not a different person, I'm not a different composer, I'm just doing something a little bit more me, and something that's not quite as tied down by what he had to do for the games in order to make it fit. So utilizing something that sounds so much like something you've heard before from him, at least most likely, that's just really smart. Utilizing something that people would recognize off of hearing it. I'm sure a lot of you have probably listened to this and you've gone, why does that sound familiar? I feel like I've heard this melody before. I feel like I've heard this song before in a very familiar way, but it's definitely not what I think it is. And that's because it kinda is. Song of Innocence and this are basically sisters, I would say. The songs are so familiar in so many ways, they're so similar, that it's like, I can't imagine why it would be anything else. The nostalgia of the key of E, what that holds in it, and what it allows for itself to do, being so on that edge of a major and a minor key, just there, there's so many shared notes in that scale that you can just feel like it fits anything. It's so flexible. It is hands down my favorite key of all time, given that flexibility. But I'm gonna avoid ranting into it again because I have a whole video about that. And if you haven't seen that yet somehow, go watch it. It's really interesting how this key does that to the brain. And I give more detail as to why I get that sensation out of it. And I'm sure some of you might relate to that in some ways. But nonetheless, beautiful song from Yu-Peng Chen, the god. I've can't say much else other than the rant I've already been on about how this song may be familiar, but I do believe that's the point, and I do believe that Yu-Peng Chen is trying to do the, hey, I'm still me, I'm over here, come on, see what I've got to give. But all in all, I just really am excited for the rest of his career going forward. I'm wondering what he's going to be doing, if he does any sort of freelance work with other game studios, or if he just kind of keeps doing what he's doing on his own and doing his own thing entirely solo. That's hard to know, obviously. I don't know his life and his plans. He might have announced them somewhere. But if any of you have any ideas of what he's planning in the future, by all means, let me know, because I don't follow him that close. So if he does do anything, I won't really pick up on it too quick. So let me know down below if there's anything that ever happens, go into my Discord, let me know, ping me, etc., etc. But nonetheless, this was a beautiful song, and I love that Yu-Peng Chen is still doing his thing, and it just that he's still him. It's nice to feel that. And even though I haven't really been that familiar with his career for that long, I feel like I've known him my whole life at this point. It's really strange. His music has such a way of pulling you into it and making you just attract to his sound, and you don't want to leave. There's absolutely no fight coming from me. I want to stay here and I want to hear more of what he has to offer. But either way, beautiful song. I'm sure the rest on this album are just as good. If anybody has a specific recommendation from this album, by all means, let me know down below. If anyone has any other Genshin music that he's done that I haven't heard yet, by all means, drop that down below too, and I will do my best to get to them as always. But if you enjoyed this video and you just liked it and you want to follow me and support me for more in the future, you know how to do all that, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!